Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of PharSide Folios with the PharSide Co-Ed Book Club. I'm your host, Monica Leek, managing editor of the PharSide Co-Ed Book Club, and we are celebrating Women's History Month, focusing on women who write, with a special series of author interviews along with our posts on all of our social media platforms. So today we have as our special guest, Mrs. Morenike Oyenusi, and she is a Nigerian-American lawyer and graduate of the University of London and Jesus College at Cambridge, who writes children's fiction, poetry, and inspirational nonfiction. Her first book is Chasing Butterflies in the Sunlight. She is widely traveled and loves reading, good food, the theater, movies, and London. Not necessarily in that order. And she lived in Nigeria and England and moving to the United States in 1995. And she's married and she has three children with her husband. So welcome to the PharSide, Ms. Oyenusi, and thank you for being with us on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on your show today.
Well, let's talk about your book. This is your first book. What was the inspiration behind Chasing Butterflies in the Sunlight?
So I really wanted to showcase the lovely childhood that I had growing up in Nigeria. I was brought up, my brother and I were brought up by wonderful parents, and we lived on a university campus in Nigeria, which was it was like living in paradise. And I had a fantastic childhood, and we it was just so much fun. Playing games, going outside, climbing trees, exploring the campus. And I just wanted to share the joys that I had growing up in a series of stories, which is how this book came about. I also wanted to share about growing up in Nigeria and Africa. There's so much prejudice and disinformation about Africa and Nigeria. And I wanted to show that, show a piece of Africa, show what it is like to have a normal childhood growing up as a child. I also wanted to show off or showcase the bonds that unite us. We have so many similarities, peoples around the world, and I wanted to show, as children, we have common bonds. Bonds, the sort of desires that I had as a child, I'm sure other children experience around the world, which is a desire to belong to a family, to a community, to be loved, to have friends. I just wanted to share that, growing up in Africa is nothing strange, and to just, remove some of those prejudices that people have about Nigeria and Africa. So, but most of all, I wanted to highlight what it was like to be a child growing up, just being myself, being a child, not having to worry about the things going on around me.
So without giving the whole story away, tell us about Chasing Butterflies in the Sunlight.
So Chasing Butterflies is very, very loosely based upon my childhood. It's not about me, but it's a series of stories. It's a chapter book with a series of stories that show the character Ronke growing up as a child. It starts from the time when she was 6 years old, and then it ends at the time she's 13. And it's just really about a series of different adventures that Ronke gets into. She likes to travel. She loves food. She loves reading. She really loves her friends. And each story depicts a moment in her life, an adventure in her life, an adventure with her friends, with her brother, with her family, just, really showing off or showing the readers what it was like to be growing up at that time.
So what is your favorite line or favorite part of your book, especially since you say it's like chapter book that has, different adventures that the main character participates in, and she has a brother and some friends. So what is a favorite part or line from your book?
So if you permit me, I'll read an excerpt from the book. I do have many favorite parts, but one part that stands out for me is a part where Ronke, the main character, is reflecting on her family heritage. She reflects on her history, on the things that her grandfather taught her about her family, and the history of her family, the fact that they were taken as slaves to somewhere in America, and then they returned as either they were freed before they were actually enslaved, or they returned as freed slaves. And she's reflecting on that history, and she's sitting in church with her grandmother, and around her there all these plaques on the wall that talk about different families in Lagos. And then she's reflecting on the fact that a lot of these families, they to Lagos, Nigeria, as returned slaves, and she's reflecting on what that means. So so that's the background to what I'm going to read. But so Ronke wondered what the lives of the families must have been like. Many of them rescued slaves, commencing new and hopefully better lives in Lagos, many becoming wealthy and elite and great contributors to the society. They set up schools and became lawyers, judges, educators, and doctors. They had lived their lives and now they were gone. Yet the circle of life, society, and death would continue without end. Before the hills in order stood, or earth received her frame, from everlasting thou art God, to endless years the same. So this, of talks about the circle of life, how life continues without end, but it also talks to me about how we are interconnected as people around the world. We all have a connection. I remember when I was writing this chapter, and I remember now, a few years ago when President Obama became the president of the United States, when he was elected president, I thought, wow, his ancestors came from Africa, his heritage is African. And years and years ago, some of his family members may have been taken as slaves, and yet here we are. President Obama of African heritage is about to become the president of the United States of America, and that just really struck a chord in me. And it's the same with this chapter; it really strikes a chord in me in that way.
The book discusses the innocence of childhood and friendships. Why do you think these concepts are so important for young children to have?
So the innocence of childhood, I just feel like children grow up so quickly nowadays. Even my children, I watch them and they're in such a hurry to go from one experience to the next. They don't actually, a lot of the time, they're not actually enjoying the moment. And I just really want children just to enjoy every moment of their lives, of their growing up, to be as innocent as for as long as possible, especially with the kind of divisive and scary world that we live in now. It's so important for children to remain innocent, to enjoy their childhood, and just, to be protected from a lot of the evils that we're witnessing. Whilst we have to prepare our children for the future and to make sure that they're well grounded, but at the same time, we really need to make sure that they treasure that innocence, that they treasure every moment of their childhood. And likewise, as far as friendships are concerned, it's important for young children to make friends, and then to also make friends from all over the world. If the opportunity arises, reach out beyond your comfort zone, make friends with people from other races, from other cultures. Make friends. And in the future, you will become, when you become a world citizen, your background and your foundation with all those strong friendships will really help you a lot.
And kind of tying in and piggybacking on what you said about making friends and being a world citizen, and the impact of having friends from different cultures and races. You definitely given the story a culturally and racially diverse setting. So why was this important for you to highlight as a writer of Nigerian descent?
I had this story had been taking root in me even before I came to the States. But when I first came to the States, I was really, or when I first came to live here in 1995, I was struck by how people lived in different boxes, um, there was no mixing, there was no diversity, in the community. Everywhere when you had Black communities, you had white communities, you had Nigerian communities, you had um, Latino communities, and there just didn't seem to be any mix. And it was so unlike anything that I had been used to. And I wanted to show this in my book, that there's a different world out there, a world of diversity, a world where you can intermingle with people, where you can learn about other cultures and imbibe other cultures, and it's another way to grow up, and it's something. Diversity is so important, and especially now, this is the people talk about diversity, but this is something that has been ingrained in me, where I just want to show that, look, you can be diverse, you can have friends from other races, you can have friends from other cultures, and it's very, very important to learn from other people's influences.
Thank you so much for sharing that and with us, and with those who are watching live, as well as those who will catch it by replay. It's important as children grow up, that they have these lessons that help them understand the world beyond their backyard, that the world is so much bigger, that that I can have friends from a whole different continent, that I can have friends from the African continent, from South America, from Asia, and we can build those connections and friendships, and that we're really not all that different from each other. We may have different backgrounds and history and language, but at the root, at our core, there's a core that's essentially the same. So
exactly.
So thank you so much for conveying that message, because it really is an important thing for young children to be able to grasp, because the world is just so much bigger. And when they go to school, they're likely to interact and see children from, all different places and experiences. So thank you for just, highlighting that for us with your book. What is something that you hope that those who will read this book to their children, or the children who will read this, or teachers who will share this story in their classrooms, what do you hope that readers will take away from your book?
Yeah, so I hope that readers will take away, exactly what you just summarized, which is that, it's okay to be friends, with people, to approach people from other backgrounds, from other ethnicities, to make friends, and that this will open up your horizon. Instead of being limited in your experience, you become a better person and able to contribute better to society. And I also want to emphasize, I want people to come away with a sense of the importance of family values and the importance of being friends, the importance of having friends and maintaining friendships. The friends that I made years and years ago, I still have a lot of them. And it's at the core of who I am. Friendship is important. And it's important to also be in a safe family, to have strong familiar ties, and to have strong community ties as well.
And that's great to communicate to, and that centers you, because family does center you, and friendships, expand you and cause you to grow. And so having those, intertwined within that story, within your story, is such a positive message for children, as well as for the adults who will, read this story or share this story with their children, with their classrooms, with, in programs in their communities. If they're, mentoring young children, this is a wonderful story to share. So definitely I'm going to encourage my programs like Boys and Girls Clubs, our Girl Scouts, our Boy Scouts, to pick up this story and add it to your library collection. Our school librarians will also want to consider adding this to their collection, as well as classroom teachers that you want to add this to your collection, because the message dealing with cultural and racial diversity, of family values and friendships is so powerful and needful in these times. You definitely want to have this as a part of your collection. So this book it was newly published, recently published in 2020. Do you have any book projects in the future that you're currently working on? And if so, what can readers expect from new projects from you?
Thanks. I'm actually working on 5 projects at the moment, but one of them is the one that is most likely to be published this year. It's a book about a boy who's struggling with the challenges of tinnitus, and tinnitus is something that is not often talked about, and but it's surprising that so many people in the world and so many people are actually suffering from this challenge. So it's a graphic book, which is it's a short story, but it's going to be illustrated. It's going to be a short graphic book, and it's going to be written in free verse, and it's to, in a kind of funny way, talk about how this boy is dealing with tinnitus, and it's also going to include resources at the back for where to get help, but also, most importantly, to educate people about what you can do to avoid it in the first place. Things about, listening to loud music, our teenagers, not to listen to loud music, not to spend time in loud environments, because this can damage your ears and lead to tinnitus. So that's one project that I'm working on. I'm also working on a non-fiction book to empower women to break away from tradition and to, embrace their identity as believers in Christ. So that's another book that I'm working on. But the most for children, the one that is likely to be published, I hope, in the next few months, is called is the book on tinnitus, and it's called The Orchestra of Sounds.
Oh, I like that. That's beautiful. So we're going to be on the lookout, our live viewers, and as well as those who will catch the replay. We want to be on the lookout for that particular book, and we also want to be sure that we are picking up this particular book of Chasing Butterflies in the Sunlight. So make sure you pick up Chasing Butterflies in the Sunlight and be on the lookout for that forthcoming book about the Orchestra of Sound. So describe your journey with, this process of writing your first book. What was that like for you?
It was a long process. The book actually took me about 14 years to write and complete and get published. I knew that I was going to write this book. And actually, the genesis starts from when I was a child, when my mother, who loved books, and I, when I was growing up, I was surrounded by her books, and she taught me the love of reading. But she said, you're gifted, you will be a writer. And so I remembered that. But when I started to have children, after I'd had my third child, I began to write this book. And it took me so long to finish because, I had obviously the demands of motherhood and being a wife and, being a lawyer and other things, to handle. But in the last couple of years, I decided I was really going to focus on it and get it done. And then I began to look around for a publisher, and I couldn't find a publisher. They just didn't seem to be interested in the stories that I had to tell. And then one day last year in 2020, like God spoke to me and said, you don't have to depend on anybody to bring your story to life. You can actually do this yourself. So I set up my own publishing entity, and independently published this book. And it was quite an experience, but in the space of a few months, I had gone from setting up the company, getting printers, getting an illustrator, all the things that I needed. And I give God the glory that that journey ended successfully. I'm still on the journey, obviously, trying to get the book out to people. But that's, the lesson is to persevere and never give up. And that's what I did, because I knew that I had that dream, and that dream was going to come to pass.
You've given us an inspirational message right there in what you said about your process, because sometimes things don't happen right away, and that there is, a divine design and appointment.
Exactly.
And God's timing is his timing. And when it is revealed, that timing is revealed, it is perfect.
Yes.
And it's for the moment and addresses the need at the time that he sets it forth. So
yes.
It's beautiful that, even with the long stint of time that it took you from, writing this book, and here it is, all of these years later that it gets published. Here you are now with your own publishing entity. And that's empowering, not just as an author, but as a Nigerian-American woman who is writing stories from her history, her experience, her context, and being able to share them with the world, because she launched out into the deep places, and God has allowed you to do something in a spirit of excellence and do it well. And so you have a beautiful first book. And of course, I'm sure it's going to be just the first of many, just because God has given you such a creative and inspirational mind, and you have such a message to share with the world, not only children, but women and more. So we definitely are excited about what will be coming from you. So based on, your own journey of writing, what are some tips that you might give somebody who wants to write or is thinking about writing? What are maybe 2 or 3 tips that you could give someone who wants to be a writer?
So my tips, I would say, believe in your dream and commit what you want to do to God, pray about it and trust in God that he will bring it to pass. And, secondly, read as widely as you can, read as many diverse authors as you can, and just read whatever you can, because that helps you to become a better writer.
Thank you so much for those tips. And I hope our replay viewers and those who are watching us live will pick up on that and be, inspired to put the pen to paper, to listen to that still small voice speaking to them as to, what to write and how to write, and, to stick with the process, and that to lean into the dream of God that he has for our lives. So thank you for those tips. So how can our viewers and listeners connect and follow you on social media, and how can they purchase your books?
My book is available on my website, www.paradiserestoredpublishing.com. www.paradiserestoredpublishing.com. I'm also on Facebook under Morenike Oyenusi, and I'm also on Instagram under Paradise Restored Publishing.
All right, so definitely you heard it here. So our replay viewers as well as our live viewers, you want to go to the website that she's mentioned. You can also, this video will be made, it's going to be live on our Facebook page, and you'll be able to replay it. Also will be you'll be able to catch it on our YouTube, the PharSide Co-Ed Book Club YouTube channel, as well as the PharSide Co-Ed Book Club page under videos. So you'll be able to see it multiple places. So if you were unable to catch us live on today, this video will still be available for you to see and to check us out. So to all of our live viewing audience and those who will catch the replay, we thank you for watching, and we want to thank our special guest, Ms. Morenike Oyenusi, for spending time with us this afternoon, and we definitely wish you continued success with chasing butterflies in the sunlight and all the many wonderful projects that you have to come. And we want
thank you.
You're welcome. And we want to tell our viewers and replay audience to make sure you're staying tuned to the PharSide Co-Ed Book Club Facebook page for more author interviews and posts as we celebrate women who write during the month of March. So until next time, many roots, many voices are a part of the infinite story. So plant your seed. Have a blessed and wonderful day.
Thank you. Take care.